All right, we've got some breaking news. We'll take you to the floor of the Senate here. From the second the Senate gavelled back into session about, I want to say, 28 minutes ago, topic number one, the developments out of President Trump and President Vladimir Putin's news conference in Helsinki. Right now, Senator Bill Nelson of Florida, he is the senior Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee, weighing in, saying, quote, he believes our intelligence community and not the former KGB spy who is, quote, trained to lie. Numerous other Republican members of Congress have already spoken out about the missed opportunity and President Trump's apparent failure to show a more aggressive stance against Russia. Senate Intel Committee Chairman Richard Burr had this to say, quote, Vladimir Putin is not our friend and never has been. Richard Burr, of course, Republican from North Carolina. Nor does he want to be our friend. His regime's actions prove it. We must make clear that the United States will not tolerate hostile Russian activities against us or our allies. Where do we go from here? And how will this play out in our future relations with Russia? We bring in the founder of the Foundation of Defensive Democracies, who was also an exchange student and journalist in the Soviet Union, Clifford May. Your gut reaction first to the news conference and what you saw.
Yeah, I think missed opportunity is a pretty good phrase. I think it was a disappointing performance. I never like to see a president of the United States put in a performance like that with an American adversary. But that has been the practice of this president, the past, certainly of President Obama, certainly, I guess, of President Bush. Putin always comes to the table and plays a better game of cards. The good news is that there were no grand bargains, no big deals concluded. It was simply the optics, which were beneficial to President Putin and were not beneficial at all to President Trump.
Well, I suppose because we don't know what happened in the meeting and what kind of deals were made, we have to go on their word. But there was this quote, and this is from President Trump. The probe into Russian meddling is a disaster for this country. Why does he not see an attack on our, I just don't understand why he doesn't see the attack on our democracy as a disaster.
President Trump, I think there are three things that are too often conflated in much of the media and certainly by the president's opponents. One, the question of whether the Russians did meddle in the elections. No question that happened.
Well, tell President Trump that. He said pretty much no question he doesn't believe that.
I think that, I think I suspect what he's afraid of is that if he acknowledges that, people, his critics and some of the media will say, if there was Russian meddling, then there must be collusion between the Trump administration. Two different things, absolutely.
Two different things.
And there's a third thing, Liz, and the third thing is, even if there's meddling happened, there's colluding, no evidence of it, there's the question of whether the intervention by the Russians in any way changed the election results. I would say that's clearly untrue. But I think he's afraid that if he admits the one, people will jump to the second and the third. And he's probably right about that.
What kind of damage, if any, has been done to our democracy to have a U.S. president? And I am repeating what our reporter Blake Berman said right after it happened. And our Neil Cavuto was just outraged. He called it disgusting what he had seen. But Blake Berman said it was rather stunning to see a U.S. president on foreign soil choosing to side with the Russian president versus his own intelligence agents whom he put into place, Dan Coates, the former senator. Any damage done to our democracy, or is it way stronger than any of what is developing here?
Well, I think our democracy is stronger. Our democracy can deal with this, no question that President Trump fumbled on this one. I think our democracy can also survive attempts by the Russians, which are going on under the Soviets as well, to interfere with our democracy and make people doubt our democratic system, which is really what this is all about. I wish that President Trump had, in public, stood up to President Putin in a very real way and made clear there are issues that matter to us and that we're the stronger power and we're not going to allow this kind of behavior and other behavior by Putin to continue unaddressed.
Clifford, President Trump, and he'd be the first to tell you, but other people tell everybody else, he's a very smart person on many different levels. So if he's so smart, people are being magnanimous, at least when you use the term he fumbled or missed opportunity, like he's some doddering, I'm confused. He would be the first to say, I'm not confused, I know exactly what I'm doing. And yet he made this comment, and this jumped out, where he said, the relationship has never been worse between the U.S. and Russia That changed as of about 4 hours ago, giving himself credit and Putin credit for smoothing things over. But the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was way worse during the Cuban Missile Crisis, or way worse during the Cold War, was it not?
I think all that is true. And, you know, President Trump has a tendency to kind of wing it on things like this and think I can just improvise and do fine. This shows that he can't. Even the best presidents, the most articulate people like President Reagan, they'd sit down and strategize how to handle a situation like this and what they were going to say and what they were not going to say because it would give rise to bad impressions. You need a good strategic communications director. You need good advisors. You need to listen to them when they tell you. I don't think that happened in this case, and I think that's why this was a bad performance, and we just have to acknowledge that and go on. The relationship is not good. I think President Trump thinks the relationship with Russia could be better. He may be right. I don't think he made it better by what he did in this instance. Last question.
If you're Dan Coats, the head of the National Intelligence Agency, do you resign?
No, I don't think so. Look, he knows who this president is. He knows this president's mouth is often
it's pretty humiliating, though, isn't it?
It is pretty humiliating. He'll decide what he wants to do. But my guess is he wants to do his job for America. This president has some very good advisors, some very good deputies, some very good people in top positions. He should want to keep them there. I hope that he would call Coats privately and say, you know, I rely on you, and I hope I didn't give you a different impression.
Okay, well, I can't wait to hear what more comes out of this. It is quite a stunning. We called it Hellraiser in Helsinki. Clifford May, it's great to have you. Thank you very much.